welcome to the first ever pre-recorded X Factor call. Wow. We usually do these live. So Cary, super grateful to have you here. First, I want to introduce Cary. Cary Jenkins is on our board here at Lease End. Was originally introduced to Lease End, or got connected with Lease End because of Dave, our CTO, which we'll dive into today. But in getting to know Cary, talking through Dave and a lot of the devs, is that Cary's been a part of 3 great exits, is currently on the board here, and has how many? How many?
3 more.
3 more companies that you're a part of right now.
Yeah, I was going to retire, and then turns out I didn't.
Okay.
And I question that every day now.
I love it. I love it. Okay. Well, let's dive in. So, Cary, rewind back to when you were in your 20s, early 20s. Well, who was Cary back then?
If I come out of my teenage years, I was mostly an athlete, and my children find that very difficult to believe at this point. But I actually went on a mission to Brazil in the late 80s, pretty tough time and place. It was a time of hyperinflation,
really
deep poverty. I was in a pretty tough part of the world.
What part of Brazil were you in?
Northeast.
Okay.
So and where I was covered probably a third to the half of the country, and so I saw a lot of it. But it was very formative for me, and I lived on about $60 a month for 2 years.
No way.
Yeah, I lived in a place one time where the monthly rent was $6, split 4 ways, was $1.50.
No way.
Yeah, so you can't go through an experience like that without being impacted, and that was actually the first time I started to think about kind of what next.
Really?
And I decided I want to be an engineer. And I thought, I'm going to go to the top of engineering, which is electrical engineering. And so I started out thinking I was going to be an electrical engineer, and until I had my first electrical engineering class and realized I don't really understand electricity.
Yeah.
Couldn't wrap my head around it, so I switched to mechanical engineering. So I actually graduated as a mechanical engineer from the University of Utah.
Really?
But when I graduated, it was kind of early 90s, and that was really when software was starting to really become something. And Microsoft was on the scene pretty significantly, WordPerfect and some other companies. And kind of turns out, kind of in hindsight, I should have gone to computer science.
Different type of engineering.
Yeah, but when I started, the real opportunities were in aerospace, but pretty quickly switched over into kind of the computer science aspect of things. My father in 1982 started the first fintech company in Utah.
Really?
Yeah.
What company was that?
A company called Sterling Wentworth, and they automated the basic functionality of a financial planner. And so I grew up with the PC.
Yeah.
I was the first person that I know that had a computer. When I was 14, I was on an Apple II. And if you saw it, if my kids saw it, they wouldn't even recognize it as a computer, actually. They had 40 character screens, no graphics, no mouse, anything like that. So I kind of grew up in my home with a dad that was a software entrepreneur, and then got into mechanical engineering. Actually started out of school in medical devices. So I have patents on medical devices from way back when. I do, yeah. And but it became pretty clear that the trends were more on the computer science side of things. I gravitated more to do that, and ended up working out in New York in the early 90s for a big systems integrator. And that was right when personal computers were coming onto the scene and really starting to take over in the corporate world.
Yeah.
And prior to that, all the big corporations were run on mainframes, and they realized that the PCs were getting powerful enough that you could have racks of PCs and outperform the mainframe. So worked for a company out in New York that was instrumental in taking PC technology into corporate America. And so, once I did that, I really never looked back, and I've been in kind of, information technology ever since.
Yeah. But you had your dad to look at as like an entrepreneur, kind of a visionary.
Yeah. My dad, turns out, is quietly one of the great entrepreneurs in Utah, probably over the last 30 years.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really kind of interesting. So when I grew up when I was 14, I had to type what my dad called pseudocode he would basically write out the logic. He had a PhD in finance, and I had to take that, type it up into a format that the developers could read.
Really?
Yeah. And
at 14 years old.
At 14 years old. Yeah. And that was kind of, can't go and play with your friends until you type up the pseudocode kind of thing. Yeah. So I literally am one of the first people. I don't think you can be, well, if you look at my timeline, I am about as early a computer child as you can have. 13, 14 years old.
Timing was perfect.
It's time. Yeah. So I've grown up with the advent of Apple, the personal computer, and then seeing where we are today. And it's just amazing to see what's happened since 1982.
Is your dad still involved in your life with entrepreneurship?
So my dad has invested in by 3 exits. He invested in the 3 exits. Yeah.
So he had some faith in you.
He had some faith in me. Yeah, kind of funny story about that. And I made him, let me think here. I made him about $50 million. So kind of funny story with that. With the first exit I had, and he made $14 million. And when I was 16, he let me take his Volkswagen diesel Rabbit up to Montana, and I get up there and we go off-roading so I can get to my favorite fishing spot. I knocked the oil pan out of the car and fried the engine. Okay. At the worst time for my dad is he's got a struggling business and so forth. I mean, I to this day I remember him having to drive up in the middle of the night to tow a broken car down, and I could tell, a lot of stress in his life at that time. So when we cut him a $14 million check, I said, "Dad, we're even on the car." Yeah. So
core memory.
Yeah. So I've been involved around, entrepreneurship in the tech industry since the beginning, literally since 1982.
So I'm curious, and here at Lease End, we have a ton of employees that have families.
Yeah.
Kids that they're raising. You've got, it's a like being a tech company in like ourselves, that it's like we have this younger crowd that's like, in that phase of life.
Yeah.
What did you take from what you learned, like the way you were raised and applied to the way you raised your kids? Like, did you do the same thing? Hey, you got to write the pseudocode before you can go out and.
Well, it wasn't that, but I didn't, a lot of people will, push things off. I want to go build myself up before I go take a chance. No, we did it pretty early. And so my kids grew up in an entrepreneurial household.
Yeah.
And I've got kind of older kids. I got younger kids. I have 6 kids spanning 20 years.
Okay.
And the older kids will remember, a lot of hard years, not a lot of money flying around, some stress. And the younger kids, the older kids will ask the younger kids or say, "Hey, I didn't have a Jeep when I went to high school," or "I never went to Turks and Caicos," kind of thing. And so, there's a little bit of that split in our home, but just like the experience I had when I grew up, my kids have had that too, of just their dad's an entrepreneur, and I've been building companies for more than 25 years.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
At this point, do you say you still love growing companies?
No.
Talk me through that.
I'm at the end, so I'm right now trying to. I said, in addition to working with Lease End, got 3 others. So 2 of them I'm trying to wind down, and then the third one I think will be a unicorn. And so it's kind of getting that on the track for success. But at this point, we all have this equation, this time-money equation.
Yeah.
And there, if you do things right, there's a point in your life where the shortage of time is more important than, scarcity of money.
Yeah.
And so at this point, I'd like to spend more time on the people in my life rather than, keep furthering the bank account.
So this ties in because as we were talking, there was a few people who stopped by my office before this recording, and they said, "Man, Cary's got this gift with relationships." And obviously, you being tied to Lease End, it's with Dave. It was a relationship there.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, like you looking back in your life, like have you consciously been aware of that you appreciate relationships and that you're good at building relationships, or is that something that you're?
I joke with people that, and it's partly true. I have 3 gifts. One, I'm really good at typing.
Typing?
I had a mother that was insistent that all of her kids play the piano. And so I had a mother that woke me up 6 a.m. from the time I was 8 to 15 so I could practice the piano. Okay.
I need that gift because my piano teacher fired me.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I mean, you know what this is. And the main thing that came out of that is I'm really good at typing.
Good.
Okay, I'm not great at playing the piano, but I am good at typing.
Good.
Second is I think I have the world record in paper airplane flight. So I'm good at making paper airplanes.
Let's go.
But the third one is throughout my life, I've been able to, whether it's consciously or not, get people that I think are way more talented than me to take a chance and to step out of their comfort zone and maybe dream a little bit and do something that they wouldn't do on their own.
Really?
Yeah. And so if you look around at the people that I've worked with, I mean, Dave's one of them. I didn't recruit Dave, but I'm surrounded by really extraordinary people that came in, and together we did very extraordinary and difficult things.
Yeah.
And I think they would all say this. They probably wouldn't have ever taken that kind of a chance, without me. So the way I think about it is, I'm kind of the engine of a lot of these things.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily like a great manager or anything like that. And so there's other people that fill different roles, and I've had a 25-year business partner that if I'm the engine, he's the rudder and the steering wheel.
Yeah.
And it's been a very successful thing, along the way. And I believe in relationships. I think, what comes around goes around. I believe in the law of the harvest, that you get what you give. And, I believe in a big pie. There's a lot of people that are entrepreneurs that are obsessed with keeping their percentage. I don't think that's the way you look at it. I think it is first and foremost, how do you win?
Yeah.
Because if you do things like this, the natural outcome is failure. And so how do you get the best people that you can possibly get involved? How can you get on the same page? And then, frankly, how can you basically just go to war together?
Yeah.
Because it's really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've got this gift. Okay. So you believe in or you get others to believe in a bigger vision than themselves and like what they're capable of. And it sounds like your dad was kind of that way with you of believing in you and putting some faith into you and instilling some of that. Is that?
It's interesting. Like, what did your dad do?
That was a school teacher.
Okay. So you did not follow in his footsteps.
No, my mom was a successful business lady, freaking awesome. But so I watched what she did, and I always had a drive from a young age. But a
lot of times we're products of our upbringing.
Yeah.
And if your dad's a doctor, your worldview is I should be a doctor. If your dad's an attorney, if your dad is a software entrepreneur, I don't know.
Yeah.
You kind of know what the gig is, and a lot of times you follow, in those footsteps. And then that being said, most people shouldn't be entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
It takes a very unique kind of a person to be a successful entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, those are, if I have a, handful of skill sets other than those three I mentioned, they're all kind of in line with being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes probably unreasonably optimistic.
Yes.
Don't remember failures.
You forget it.
Yeah. I read a Harvard Business Review article one time that said that the people that entrepreneurs are most like is juvenile delinquents.
That's hilarious.
And juvenile delinquents, they do things first and then they think about them. Yeah. And most people aren't like that.
Yeah.
And so you got to have some interesting characteristics. If you look at like the personality charts that they have, like I took a personality test once.
Okay.
And I got, my personality type says you'll make the least amount of money. Okay. Which is probably true without like these other people in my life to kind of put structure to things. Because if you are a dreamer and, that's not necessarily the best way to make money in this world. The best way is to climb the corporate ladder, frankly, the best and most reliable way. But probably greatness is on the fringes of everything. So, if you can take, some of these attributes that allow you to do things that most people don't have the courage to go and do.
Yes.
or they get paralyzed by all the things that they don't know.
Yeah.
And if you got the personality who's like, let's do this because it sounds fun, then that allows you to at least get in motion. But again, if you don't have complementary set of people around you, you will fail.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's such good. So when I was, a year and a half ago, when I was first introduced to Lease End with Xander and Brandon,
Yep.
I remember just being amazed at the talent that they had attracted here. It was like like the leadership team meeting Dave, meeting Chip. I'm just like, holy cow. Yeah. Like this is like,
it's like, what, did they absorb all the talent in Burley?
Yeah.
Because there can't be much more than this.
It's so true, right? It's incredible.
Yeah.
And, but that was what was so, it was such a draw for me, is it was this abundance mindset of, hey, we are going to have the best talented people, and we're going to invest in them. We're going to find them, and we're going to like all get locked on, in on the same vision. And it's contagious.
So let me speak to that a little bit.
Please.
So one of the ideas that I formed over the years is that, is this ratio of talent to ego.
Okay.
Okay. So I don't care if you have a big ego. I really don't. Just back it up. Okay. That's it. It really sucks if you got a huge ego and you're not that competent.
Yeah.
That's not very helpful. And so that's how I measure people, which is this capability to ego ratio. And take Dave Williams as an example. I've worked with Dave for many years. His capability is literally through the roof.
Incredible.
He is the best tech guy that I've worked with since 1982. Okay, so I go all the way back, and I'm telling you, he's the best one I've worked with.
Yeah.
And most of the time, I end up like fighting with tech guys. At this point, I'm kind of tired of them, because I've worked with them for so long. And anyway, Dave's extraordinary because of his grasp of all the technical issues, but also the business issues as well, and his ability to manage and his even temperament. He's extraordinary. And then the other side of the ratio is that guy is not an egomaniac. And so, and you look around the table, Brandon's the same.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Brandon is
so talented.
He's so talented. And so I could go down through the list of everybody, and it's rare. And I would say for everybody at Lease End, enjoy this ride, because you may not get it a second time in your entire life. Okay.
That's
to be on a winning team, a growing team that's doing something exciting, innovative, enjoy it. You could be working at IBM, for 30 years, or, it gets a lot worse than this. And so I would truly enjoy this ride, because it's, you got great leadership. I don't know, the workforce as well.
It's incredible. Yeah. It really is. Like the talent that it's attracted, and it's like this recording here is like an example of just, we hope that the culture maintains a culture of growth and a culture of wanting to improve, not just, at work, but in personal life. Because the two will go right together. Yeah. And we're spread out between Idaho and here in Lehigh. And it's like, but to maintain that culture, to have the leadership that we have, is pretty dang remarkable. Well,
companies and their success and their trajectory are reflective of management and leadership. And it doesn't get much better than this. Yeah. And so I'm just happy I get to be a part of it.
It's cool.
It's great.
It's cool. Yeah. So Cary, let's talk to some of these employees. You've been a part of 3 successful exits. Mm-hmm. You've rubbed shoulders with a fair share of employees over time. Yeah. What kind of advice would you give to an employee that's here at Lease End, wants to grow, wants to do better in their career? Like, from your perspective, what do you look for? You talk about this ego versus talent, but like, what do you look for in great employees that offer value and that you see value in?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. I'm building other companies right now. One in particular, I spend most of my time on. And what's interesting is I look back over the last 25 years. I'm hiring the same people. Okay. They're all in their 20s. Okay. I just keep getting older. Okay. So when I was, late 20s, early 30s, I hired, 25, 26 years old. And then when I'm 40, I'm hiring 20-year-olds and 50, and so, and I like that. I like having young people. I like the energy. Gen Z is kind of bugging me sometimes at this point, I got to admit, but I like that, and technology is for the young, frankly. Yeah. You don't have 60-year-olds reimagining the world.
Yeah.
Okay. Elon Musk is probably early mid 50s, so he's a little bit unique, but so it's kind of a young person's game. And so that's been fun. But here's the way. So, I've got a runaway SaaS company myself right now. It's just exploding. The idea here for me is as we're hiring, I don't want to hire anybody that doesn't give something up to be there. Okay. If I'm not going to compete, try to max out, and it's just, do you want to come and do something great or not?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm telling you, most jobs, you're not going to get that. You're going to be a cog in the machine. You're going to be drowned out by meetings. You're not going to get a lot of recognition.
Yeah.
I think for most people, and I think for most men in particular, they spend most of their time doing things they don't like to pay the mortgage, put food on the table, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And so do something great. I don't know. I don't know what else to say.
Dude, it's so interesting. So it's talking, do you know Brian Murphy by chance?
Brian Murphy.
So
sounds familiar.
So he lives in Heber. He had sold his private equity firm, or had been acquired by another private equity investment firm, top 100 investment firms in the entire world.
Yeah.
Multi-billion-dollar exit. Anyways, super successful throughout his career. But it was interesting. He said that he's like the best advice I was ever given is he's like, you don't worry about making your wealth until you're in your 40s. And he's like, before that, learn all the skills and go do things that are special and be a part of things that are like disruptive, because like everything, it compounds.
So I have this opinion in life right now that life is kind of a paradox, which is the more you want something and you make that the focus, the less you're likely to get it.
Interesting.
So if your goal in life is to make a lot of money, I think that's a pretty hollow goal. Okay. But if your goal is to live a big life, work with amazing people, and do great things, guess what the byproduct of that is? It's wealth.
Yes.
And so I think that's the way that people should approach this. And I think it's how they should approach pretty much everything in life. I mean, whether it's your relationship with your spouse, I don't think it's healthy to be outcome based. And I think the more you're outcome based, the less likely it is that it's going to happen. And so, literally, I know, because I know what's going on in this business. This is a special time, a special moment with special people. And so enjoy it, learn from it, and maybe it'll be inspiring in the next stages of your career. That's
great advice. Because you literally hear from all the devs. It's like all these devs have come from, they've been together for a while because of, you and Dave, whatever, and they follow. It's the people you meet along the way, which is special. So, okay, one pivot. This is let's get a quick laugh out of this.
Okay.
I've got Brad really badly.
Perkins.
Brad Perkins wants to
How long
hear.
is his hair right now, by the way?
Dude, he tells me he's about to cut it, and I'm like, no.
Last time I saw, I was like, is that you? Because your hair's really long. It's a lot longer than I remember. Is it still like that?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
He's got the Jesus hairdo.
So before you go on your question,
please.
One time Brad shaved his beard, and it was like everybody's like, how fast can you grow that back? Because it's just not. I can't do this.
Well, I've only known Brad with the long hair, so I'm like, Brad, come on, dude. Just hold on.
I gotta poke in. I got to put my head in and see what his hair is.
Okay, great. We'll do it after. But so Brad wanted to make sure that we definitely touched on the moment.
Did he save my life?
Him and his dad saved your life. Right. Talk to us about this.
So I had a friend. His name's Eric Smith, really successful entrepreneur in Utah. So he built Control 4, which was a $1 billion IPO. Yeah. And so one time he came down to my house and he said, "Hey, let's go for a ride." He was in a Razor. Okay. And I'd never been in one. We went up American Fork Canyon. And at this point in my life, I didn't know how crazy a driver he was.
Yeah.
He went flying up American Fork Canyon, like, I don't even know how fast, 40, 50 miles an hour. It was like crazy. And I just thought that was a normal thing if you're in a Razor. Yeah. Anyway, it was so cool. I get back and I said, I'm going to buy a Razor. Okay. I didn't know anything about him. And then I had a cousin or nephew that he said, "Hey, I'll get you one, a used one." Because I'm like, "Oh, sure, fine, whatever." I don't know anything about them, so I'll just kind of entry point. So I got a 2016 Can-Am, and I didn't realize that there's been a lot of advancements since that razor been built. And anyway, we're out in Sand Hollow with that razor, and I'm in sand, and I blew up the belt. Like, I'd heard you could do that, but I didn't realize.
You officially did it.
I did it. Yeah, it was really bad. And I'm there with like my wife and a kid or two. I mean, and it's January, February. And I'm like, I am totally screwed. And it was
You're
not in
stuck.
a good place.
Yeah, no, you're stuck.
And it was the only trip I ever took where I left the belt at home. Okay. So I'm like, I don't even know what I'm going to do here. Anyway, and then then I remembered, oh, Brad is here. And so I climbed at the top of a sand dune. I called them and I actually reached him. And they were, I think, heading back, but they turned around, went to the razor belt store, bought me a belt, and his dad's a mechanic.
Yeah.
So they got all their tools, and I'll say they saved our lives. We probably would have frozen in Sand Hollow. So yeah. So that's that story. So I'm glad he remembers that.
Oh, that goes to say a lot about Brad.
Oh,
He'll
good
go out of his way to do
Really
whatever
good
needs to be
dude.
done. That's awesome.
Yep.
Okay, so through your exits, Cary,
Yeah.
let's talk leadership for just a minute, because there's a lot that through exits there's transitions. There's a lot that you learn, right, individually and whatnot. Talk us through what did you learn about leadership through your exits and through your career?
I think it's really important to be honest with yourself. And honest with yourself in terms of what you do well and what you don't do well. And we have this idea that the objective is to be the leader. And I don't think that's the way you should look at it. There's not a lot of people there's not a lot of people that should be entrepreneurs. Frankly, there's not a lot of people that are good leaders too. Okay, but it is possible to reach the top of leadership, and you're just not very good. We see this all the time. Okay, so I think it's important to be honest about who you are, how you personally maximize. Okay, so as an example, I've never been the president of the companies I've started. Okay. I've done, I've assumed that role for periods of time, but it's not something that I particularly like. It actually stresses me out.
Yeah.
There's some people that they're just really good at putting things together and talking to crazy people and all of that.
That's not me.
And it's not me either.
Yeah.
And so there's power and there's I think success if you can recognize that. Okay, and really maximize, within the sphere and the capabilities that you've got. That's the number one thing that I've learned. And then the other thing is, I would say, is that this whole thing, particularly like tech startups and so forth, I think it's a lot. I mean, intelligence is great, but what's most important is grit. I mean, and you sometimes see things on Instagram about grit, but it's like taking a punch. Yeah. And how can you do that for years? Yeah. Maybe decades. Yeah. And and this is the other thing I'll say about Dave. Not that we went through tons of really hard things together, but I've never seen him discouraged. Have you ever seen him discouraged?
No.
Yeah.
No, I haven't.
Ever.
No.
He's just tough. He's just a freaking tough dude. And I think maybe they only breed tough people in Burley. I don't know.
I think that might be part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, but and honestly, there may be something that comes out of a community like that. I don't know if they're farming, ranching. I don't know what it is, but you grow up and you're tough and you can do hard things for a long time. And I mentioned if there's anything that bugs me right now, it's Gen Z sometimes bugs me because they're not very tough. Yeah. They're like kind of pantsy sometimes. I don't know if you're Gen Z.
Yeah,
or not,
I
it's just like stay in the game. Take a punch.
I used to have it when I was doing door to door. I used to have a rule that if they wrestled or they were a farmer, I didn't care what their resume was.
Right.
I didn't care what their background. Those are the two things I need to know. Come here.
Maybe 80% of success in this life is just stay in the ring, just staying in, and not getting discouraged. And I don't know. That's so
interesting because just talking with you for the last few minutes, it's interesting to see you truly do know like your strengths, and
Yeah.
you're just like, I'm honest.
very
about
comfortable.
it. I'm honest about it.
very comfortable with myself.
That is like a part of this is that it's like, I don't know if it's social media or what, but it paints this picture of, hey, we got to go be something we're not.
No.
And we got to go grow in title and grow on these things. And it's like, no.
No. Be who you are.
Be who you are.
So,
and success can be found with who you are.
Yeah. So here's an example of that, which is, okay, I got, 6 kids from 35 to 15. Okay. So there's dad advice along the way. And at some point it's like, Dad, what should I study or what should I do?
Yeah.
The real question is, are you going to be the best at what you choose? So think about an accountant, okay? How much money does the best accountant on the planet earn? Probably $10 million a year, okay? One of these fancy accounting firms out of New York City.
Yep.
Okay. What does a mediocre or really not very good accountant make? Like $20 an hour.
Yeah.
Okay. Pick an attorney, the same thing. The spectrum is millions to $100 an hour.
Yeah.
A doctor, a salesperson.
Yeah.
What does the best salesperson make?
Millions.
Worst makes. What does a median make? Zero. Okay. So it's like, be good at your craft.
Yeah.
Whatever that is, if your skill set is sales, be the best damn salesperson around.
Yes.
If you're a nerdy accountant, be the best tax accountant the world has ever seen. Okay. And so I think that's very important, and you might have these natural leadership capabilities, and that's fantastic. And, the reality is we tend to worship leadership for some reason. It's just a different set of skills. But just take pride in your craft, whatever that is.
Doesn't make you better or worse.
Doesn't
It's
make
like
you better
what's
or
right
worse.
for you.
What
It's
is
what's
right
right
for
and
you.
wrong for
That's
you.
right.
That's all.
That's right. Yep.
That's what it comes back to.
Yep.
Cary, this is awesome, man. Look, I want to respect your time. And the last thing I really want to touch on is a few of these guys talked about how you love the outdoors.
Yeah.
And you've summited a few mountains. And it's interesting. You talk about grit.
Yeah.
And about summiting these mountains. Or I think of some of these mountains and I'm like, man, that's got to take some grit. Not easy. But talk to us a little bit about that.
Did they tell the whole story there?
No.
Okay.
Nope.
That's interesting.
Will you?
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit of a lengthier story, but
I got time.
yeah. I love the outdoors. Always have. I think what they're talking about started in 2014. I had a friend named Don Cash. Have you heard that name before?
No.
He's kind of an icon around here.
Entrepreneur as well?
No.
Okay.
He was not an entrepreneur. He, in some ways, was the guy that built the Adobe building.
Okay.
Okay. At that point of the mountain.
Yeah.
In the sense that business was formerly known as Omniture.
Okay.
Okay. And Don was brought in as the sales guy to launch Omniture. So he took Omniture from, I think, 8 million in revenue to 400 million in, I think, 5 years.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. So he's probably, I still think of him as the greatest salesperson ever to, walk around Utah.
Yeah.
Somebody can correct me on that. But, and he was one of my best friends. Okay. And as things turned out, kind of funny enough, his daughter was a missionary in Columbus, Ohio, where we lived.
No way.
Yeah. And I would make waffles for all the missionaries. I had a 20-year waffle eating contest for missionaries. And she was there. And one day she's, leaving our house and she looks at me, kind of this funny look, and I'll never forget it. And she said, "You're kind of like my dad. You guys would be friends." And I went, "Oh, okay. Why don't you give me his contact info and I'll send him some pictures." So I went on Facebook that night, just friend requested Dawn.
Yeah.
And he accepted, and I said, "Hey, I'm just, I'm in Columbus. I got pictures of your daughter. She's doing great. Love her to death." And he said, "Oh yeah, thanks. This is great. When next time you're in Utah, we ought to go to breakfast." And so I was out in Utah a few months later, and we had breakfast at some place on 123rd. And funny thing about Donnie, he's this larger than life guy. He's about 6'2", 240, kind of a bodybuilder.
Okay.
And he always wore tight Superman t-shirts. Like t-shirts that my daughters would wear. I mean, just like really tight. It's kind of funny. And it's a really cool guy, just a cool guy.
Yeah.
And guess what? We turned out to be best friends.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so just like his daughter said, and then 2014, he hit me up and said, "Hey, come down to my office and let's talk." And so I went to the Adobe building and we grabbed breakfast there, and he's wearing a tight Superman t-shirt again. And he said, "Cary, you know, man, sometimes I've been doing this a long time, sometimes tired of corporate America and all of that. Let's go do something epic." And I'm like, "Oh, what are you talking about?" And he gives me a book called The 7 Summits.
Oh, okay.
And I'd never heard of the 7 Summits. He says, "Yeah, Cary, let's go climb the 7 highest peaks on the 7 continents." And I'm like, "What do you, like Everest?" And he said, "Yeah." And I'm like, "That's crazy." He said, "All right, well, let's just start with this first one. It's in Argentina. It's called Aconcagua." And I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah, they leave in like 4 months. Like, how long is it going to take?" And he said, "It'll take like a month." I'm like, "I can't like leave work for a month." And
Because you're at what point in your career at this point?
I had sold a business to, I'd sold a business to Mass Mutual.
Okay.
And I had told them I would stick around.
Yeah.
Okay.
So taking a month off was not realistic. That was.
I
not
mean,
like-
I'm sure they would have allowed me, but like that's not. I've never taken a month off, and I take a month off, and I'm not taking my family.
Yeah.
That just seems crazy. Anyway, make a long story short, I'd literally been trying to get fired there for about 6 months because they were driving me crazy. I love them to death, but I'm not well suited to work at a big insurance company on the East Coast.
Yeah.
And finally, we came to an agreement, and I don't have a job. It's literally the first time, probably since I was 14, that like I actually don't have a job. Now, I started another company that I just jump into, but I didn't have any actual responsibilities. And Don, because he's the great salesman that he is, he already talked to me and failed trying to get me to go with him on this epic trip. So what a great salesman does then is he says, "Okay, what's the next, kind of arc to get what I want?" So he calls my wife.
No. He's like, "I'm not taking no as an answer."
Yeah. So he calls my wife, and then he's telling her, Cary's been working a long time, to feed the family, and he's been, man, it's been stressful, and he hasn't taken any time for himself. You know what? I think he should go climb Aconcagua with me. And, he's going on, and he actually brings her to tears. Like, "Don, you're right. He needs to go." Okay.
Great salesman. Holy cow.
Fantastic. He didn't have to sell me. He sold my wife.
Yeah.
And so she calls me up and she's crying and she's saying, "You need to do this. I don't care how long it takes. I don't care how much it's going to cost. I want you to go do this." And I'm like, "Well, I guess I'm going to Aconcagua." And so I called Don and I say, "Hey, I'm in." And then instantly like that, he says, "Great. I've got all the information on a web page for you, all filled in. Just give him your credit card and we're going." Okay. And so
assume the sale.
Yeah.
What a guy.
Yeah. And so I go, "Okay, here's my credit card. Boom, we're going." Okay. This was 30 days before the expedition was to start. So I just put money down to climb a mountain that's 23,000 feet.
Oh my
I hadn't even heard of it. And I didn't even know what I was getting into. Okay. And then the next day I'm reading about this mountain and I'm like, what am I doing? I mean, I'm reading about people dying, can't get helicopters up there, falling in the crevasses, all this. And I couldn't even sleep. Okay. It's like, I didn't even know what I signed up for.
You're like, "I've done Temp, but that's about it."
Yeah. I mean, Temp's what? 11,000 feet, 23. It's more than 2 miles higher than Temp.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. It's just on another scale.
Yes.
And literally, I didn't even heard of this mountain.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But so I'm going with Don. And anyway, so, I try to get as prepared as I can in 30 days. Don promised that he would help me with my backpack when I'm getting it on off so I don't hurt my back. And the whole time I'm like, I'm so nervous. I'm so scared because who knows?
Yeah.
You don't know what's going to happen to you at 17, or 19 or 20,000 feet. Nobody knows until you're there.
Yeah.
But hey, we went anyway. And what was interesting about that was there were 10, it was an international expedition. There were 10 of us, and 5 happened to just, by chance, happen to be from Salt Lake.
No way.
2 attorneys I hadn't met before, and then a crazy guy that went to high school with my brother. Okay, and then Don and myself. And so we get there, we fly into Chile, then over into Mendoza, Argentina, and then we start like a 50-mile trek through the Andes with mules. And it's one of the coolest things I've done in my entire life.
Gosh.
Yeah. And no phones, nothing. I remember thinking, and even to this day, it's the only time that I felt like I was 17 again. I'm just with my buddies, we're just laughing and we're trying to do something hard. And anyway, it took us, I don't know, a week or so to make it to base camp. And then I don't know if you know how you climb these mountains. You don't just go straight up. You go up to a camp, drop off stuff, then come back, and you climatize. And then you wait a day or two, and then you climb up again, and then you stay there, and you take another day, and you stair step up. So you go up and down, up and down,
Oh
up
my
and down.
gosh.
So it takes a long time, and that's how you can handle the change in altitude. Okay, so at every stage of this, I'm like, I have no idea what's going to happen. And I remember getting to about 16,000 feet, and they're dragging this dude out unconscious.
Oh,
And he's younger and fitter than me.
you're watching this.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh man.
No.
Yeah. And but the other part of this was I didn't realize this. This isn't an up and down. This is a one-way trip. So I mean, I had to do it. And anyway, get up, 17,000 feet. Man, to look down on the Andes
Oh my gosh.
is like, I can't even explain how amazing that is. Get to 20,000 feet. And that's like surreal. I mean, it's kind of like walking around breathing through a straw. Anyway, make a long story short here. Don came close to dying on that trip.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I think he may have the world record for the slowest ascent and descent from high camp up to the summit and back. And we left about 5 a.m. Our team left about 5 a.m. He got in about midnight. So it was, almost 20 hours on the mountain. And there you have limits at that altitude. He came, when he finally got down, I've never seen anybody so exhausted in my life. He literally collapsed in my arms. And I had to drag him into the tent, put him into his sleeping bag and, just try to take care of him. And then at night, he started to, his lungs were starting to fill up with fluid. There's
Oh my gosh.
the real risk there, cerebral edema and pulmonary edema. Cerebral edema is where your head swells, your brain swells up, and pulmonary edema is where your lungs fill up. It sounded like he was going into pulmonary edema. And so, I kind of took care of him through the night to get him, make sure he made it. It was actually close.
Oh my
And
gosh.
anyway, we made it back down. The next, that was one of 6. The next mountains.
Can I
Yeah.
ask you a question on that real quick?
Yeah.
So at what level was that on the mountain where he started to really kick into, oh shoot, this is not well. I'm not doing well.
Well, it was on his. I mean, it was the whole experience going from 20,000 feet to about 23,000 feet and then back down. But it was that high camp, which is at 20,000 feet, where we stayed the night, where it was really
brutal.
scary. It was really scary.
Do you have any discussion of are we really going to finish this? Are we really going to do this? Or was it?
Yeah,
We're
I
doing
have
this.
actually some tough memories of this. One of them was I said, Don, we shouldn't do the 7 summits. And the joke was, instead of the 7 summits, we should do the 7 Four Seasons.
Very different.
Yeah, very different. And then the other thing that was interesting here was, again, I just, this is still in my head. When he's kind of almost delirious, he's crying out for Monette, who was his wife, and just wanted her to hold him. Yeah. It was very interesting.
Special, man. That's
So, and I'll tell you, there's a point to all this. Make it back down. He's okay, but he's a big guy, and mountaineering isn't that suitable for big people. I'm even like borderline.
really.
Yeah, you shouldn't mountaineer for sure.
What are you trying to say?
Yeah, and then fast forward, and so there's 6 more summits to climb. I sold another business. I'm in another earnout. So I'm in working through another.
Want to get fired?
A big company. Yeah, I actually have in my employment agreement that if I'm going to do anything dangerous, I have to get board approval, which is interesting. Yeah, and then I had kids get married. Anyway, between my kids getting married when he wanted to go do other mountains, and then like I was going to go do Denali with him. That's in Alaska. The board came back and asked me not to do it. Okay. And on that summit, I actually have the pictures on my phone still. I'm following as he's going up and down the mountain and so forth. And then I see that he's at high camp. Looks like the weather's going to be okay. Anyway. And then sooner than I would have expected, I get a picture back from him. And he did a particular pose on every summit. And he sent me that. And at first I was excited. The second, I'm like, how am I getting this? And, because I shouldn't be getting this for weeks.
Yeah.
And what had happened is weather got bad. He had some kind of equipment issues, and he ended up losing 3 fingers, big part of his nose, and almost all of his toes from frostbite. Almost died. He had to be life flighted off.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And then, he had to be life flighted off, and then took a Learjet to San Francisco maybe, or Seattle. No, I think it was Seattle, and then was put in the burn unit at University of Utah, and I went and saw him, and
man,
had some pointed friend conversations,
Yeah.
at that point.
Yeah.
And then anyway, just kind of fast forward again, in May of 2019, he reached the summit of Everest.
Whoa.
Passed out and died at the Hillary Step. And that's where he is. He's still attached to the ropes on the Hillary Step. And if you,
Oh my goodness.
pictures all over the place of, one of my best friends on the, the most famous mountaineering obstacle in the world. Yeah.
Don.
Yeah.
My goodness, man.
Yeah. So, and actually, when I was with all these guys, the day that Don was summiting Everest, I closed my door, and I'm triangulating with a friend in who's on vacation in Italy, and another friend that had climbed Aconcagua with me, and we're just tracking his progress up the mountain the entire day. So
You were keeping it close.
Yeah, that's that story. So that's
I'm sorry, I didn't know that was going to go that direction with at the end, but that is
So all these memories I have of him in Aconcagua, and taking care of him through the night and crying out for his wife, and these are all the memories I have, and just love this guy. He had 3,000 to 5,000 people at his funeral, and just one of my. You don't get a lot of best friends in life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said he was bigger than life, and
he was bigger than life.
Just him,
no doubt.
Saying, "Let's go do the 7 summits." That's a
Right.
big task. That is.
Yeah.
There's not many that dream that big.
A normal friend doesn't say, "Let's go climb Everest," or "Let's go climb Aconcagua," and I don't know where that is. Yeah, but we went and did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Cary, I appreciate the vulnerability, and I appreciate you sharing, because it's interesting as you're talking through that early on. You'd mentioned that you're like, I just have I have an ability to help people, dream bigger and attract them to want to dream
That's
bigger.
right.
And it shows that it's not just in business, because as you're going out and doing this, like somebody like, dude, that's wild. I like to think that I think a little big sometimes. That's not. That is incredible.
You live once. I think, for anybody that's religious, this is the parable of the talents, which is whatever talents you're given. The objective is not losing things. It's how much can you maximize? And I don't even think that's in terms of money. I think more than anything, like, my real metric that I think about is how many people did I make millionaires along the way? That's how I measure it. And all I know is that if I help other people achieve their dreams, I get mine. This is the paradox of life again, which is if you don't focus on the end goal but on everything else, you actually end up.
Let it be a byproduct.
It's a byproduct. Yep.
Let it be a byproduct.
Yep.
Well, I feel like I've personally experienced that here at Lease End. I see it where you think of it through summiting a mountain. It's like, man, they've the last 4 years, they're doing something that's never been done before. We're doing something that's never been done before.
Well, I'll just tell you this. I mean, I'm really plugged into, particularly the investment banking world, and I talk to private equity all the time. Nobody's ever seen what Lease End has done.
It's incredible.
No, it's like never been done that I've seen.
It is. It's absolutely incredible, and it's only been possible because we have an incredible team and incredible leadership, and so.
Yep.
Cary, we appreciate you taking the time, man.
Okay.
Thank you so much, and
Okay.
maybe one of these days we'll
Go
have you
Burley.
back. Let's go.